Jonathan Lethem nació en Nueva York en 1964. Tiene publicados cerca de 30 libros que incluyen 11 novelas, 4 libros de relatos, ensayos, cómics y libros de no ficción. Entre sus novelas se destacan obras tan originales, disruptivas y disímiles como Cuando Alice se subió a la mesa, Huérfanos de Brooklyn, que recibió en Estados Unidos el Premio Nacional del Círculo de Críticos, Journey City y Los Jardines de la Disidencia. Por su parte, M. John Harrison nació en Rugby, Inglaterra, en 1945. Tiene publicados más de 20 libros que incluyen 11 novelas, 5 libros de relatos, novelas gráficas y recopilaciones de sus artículos de crítica literaria. Sus libros, tan bellos como desconcertantes, incluyen novelas como El curso del corazón, Luz, Nova Swing, con la que recibió los premios Arthur Seckler y Philip K. Dick, y los libros de relatos El mono de hielo y Preparativos de viaje. Bueno, podemos empezar. Una de las cosas más difíciles cuando uno tiene la oportunidad de encontrarse con autores que admire y con los que viene dialogando hace años y que ellos lo sepan, es no mostrarse como un psicótico que espera que ese diálogo mental continúe. No se preocupen, no espero que se hagan cargo de las respuestas que me he dado a preguntas que nunca les hice. O al menos lo voy a intentar. Hay veces, y esto creo que lo podemos compartir entre todos, pero hay veces que nos sentimos atraídos por los libros del autor. Y hay veces en que además de los libros, nos sentimos atraídos por la personalidad y la voluntad que gravita detrás de esos textos. Por lo que sospechamos o entrevemos de la relación única que estos autores tienen con la escritura. Creo que este es el caso de Lethem y de Harrison. Creo que eso es lo que pasa con sus libros. Cada uno de ellos pone en crisis todo lo que creíamos saber de sus búsquedas. Cada libro nos empuja a redefinir nuestro lugar como lector. Por eso quería abrir la charla preguntándoles qué es lo que creen que más ha cambiado a través de los años y de los libros en su relación íntima con la escritura y qué es lo que les parece que ha permanecido constante.
I began as a writer of science fiction, and at a time when a science fiction novel was defined as being 50 to 60,000 words long and having a quite rigid form of content. And I was taught to write into that form by very specialised and successful writers of that kind of fiction at the time. So I learned very quickly over a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, what I didn't like, which was that form of writing. And I immediately began to look for ways to disrupt those forms. And I spent perhaps a decade, in a sense, trapped between a kind of fiction I didn't want to write and a condition in which I wasn't sure what I did want to write, which is an evil place to be, I can tell you. It's not very satisfactory to your personality, to your sense of yourself. And then I decided to give it up completely. I put fiction aside. Sorry, you see, now we did that. We did that. We made him do that. But by force of will, sheer force of will. Where was I? I was trapped in an evil place. You see, this is how fiction is structured. This is how we write fiction. I was trapped in an equal place, but with one bound, I was free. Actually, it wasn't.
It just needed a distraction.
Yeah. But that's so much of writing is sleight of hand, isn't it? You see, we've distracted the audience's attention with this kerfuffle here, and now we're off somewhere else. I packed it in for 2 or 3 years. I put everything that I had finished in a drawer, because in those days manuscripts were on paper, and so you could put them in a drawer. What you would do with them these days, if you decided to disown them, I don't know. I put them in a drawer, and I decided that I would not write or sell anything until I had found out what I did write and who I was. And I learned to do that in 2 ways. Firstly, I gave up writing and I went rock climbing instead. And let me tell you, it was more fun. It's fun because it's a sport. It gets you out in the fresh air, which writing does not. And also, you could fall on your hip from 30 feet up, 70 feet up, and that would be interesting if painful. The second thing I did was to read a lot of literary criticism, to go into, with more or less success, the prevailing critical theory of the day in Europe, and at the same time read back into modernist fiction what I think of as proto-modernist fiction, the modernists who came before, say, Virginia Woolf. And by the time I'd finished that, and by the time I had become a climber rather than a writer, I decided that I could start writing again, so I wrote about climbing. That was a huge mistake, because it's a huge mistake to give up writing and then start writing about the thing you gave up writing to do. I got one book out of it, and it's probably the best book I wrote, to be honest. It's a book of completely experiential reportage of what it's like to be a rock climber in the early 1980s in Great Britain. So it didn't have a huge audience, let's be honest. But it did win me a prize, and it did change my career completely. Because by the end of it, I did know who I was, and I have been able to develop that writer inside me ever since. And I continue to do that until today.
So, I do remember the question, and I will sort of try to answer it. But I want to work off of some of Mike's descriptions, because it's actually an interesting place for me to build a description of how I started out, but also describe how I became familiar with Mike's writing and what it meant to me, because it was emblematic of a kind of writing I imagined was a kind of writing that I was very drawn to. It was, in a way, I founded my own writing life on a mistake. I took this crisis that Mike describes, which I think was true for a lot of writers in your generation, who were involved with genre. I took it as a positive attribute. I thought the struggle that I see in J.G. Ballard and in your early work and in some US-based writers like Thomas Dish and Joanna Russ and Samuel Delaney to elevate the genre materials that were still entrenched in a kind of pulp rigidity, and also were suffering the kind of indignities of being ignored by serious readers in many ways. I took that struggle as a site of enormous possibility. I thought it had been opened up, in a sense, by your struggle, and I wanted to be one of those writers. And I was equally interested in writers like Patricia Highsmith and Raymond Chandler, who had struggled from within the crime field to wrench open a space where it bridged to something more traditionally literary, in both in its result and in its in response to it. And so, I mean, I was excited by the Draconian trilogy, and even by Centurion Device, which I think is a book.
My favorite book of mine.
Somehow I knew that. But I also read Climbers, which is, you're very modest about it, it's a marvelous novel. And that you've done both meant more to me than I could explain. It was very important to me that some writers had done more than one kind of writing. Somehow that seemed to be crucial. And I also liked, certain eccentric writers like Thomas Berger in the US, who'd written from within a kind of eccentric self-appointment of his own. He'd written crime novels and science fiction novels like Western, and he kept trying to do different things. And they were books that took a lot of energy from vernacular US culture, from the movies, and from just the energy of small town talk and of the lingo, Americana, and yet also had this self-conscious, elaborate literary quality to it. And I wanted all of these things to mingle in my own work. I wanted the energies that I was attracted to in the genre reading I was doing, but also in comic books and film, to invest in something that would be visible, credible, for one of the less pretentious terms, in a literary context.
Yeah.
And the other form of nourishment I took, or encouragement I took, was the idea of international literatures where these conditions were arranged differently. And specifically, Borges and Cortázar, but also Kolo Abe in Japan and Angela Carter in England.
Kolo Abe.
Incredible. And I thought, well, Stanislaw Lem in Poland. And, but I did idealize your island because I thought the existence of things, first of all, I thought J.G. Ballard had somehow exemplified in the English language. He was the Kolo Abe, or he was that figure. But also there seemed to be institutions like Interzone magazine. And I thought you figured it all out.
I don't think we have, but we have the venues, it's true.
Yeah. If you were reading science fiction, there was nothing like Interzone or Ambit. Things that mixed up, beautifully mixed up these conditions. And so I wanted to publish in Ambit and Interzone. And what I don't know whether you remember, Mike, is that when I was 30 years old and my first novel was published, I came over with literally like an old-fashioned letter of introduction from an editor named Ellen Dappa. And I came knocking on your door and Jeff Ryan's and John Clute's to announce myself. and I insisted that you would give me a cup of tea and encourage me. We did, absolutely. You were all very polite. Nobody knew what to say or how to send me away. But I really felt that there was something about the situation in England that was ahead of, that Thomas Dish, for instance, who was totally frustrated in the U.S., made more sense and was more comfortable, in England. And I think he was. And Philip K. Dick, who was this great, almost talismanic figure for me, was all in print in England and France in translation, and Germany in translation, while he was totally out of print in the United States. So I thought, this is where what I'm trying to do will be coherent. So now I'll answer your question a little bit. I moved through a period initially where I thought everything I will do will be like Thomas Berger. I'll visit every genre I can identify with my reading appetites. And that meant not only the ones that were in bookstores and libraries, sections of the spotted, crime or horror or science fiction or fantasy. But also I felt there were genres that didn't have sections in bookstores that I felt were equally remarkable for their formal intensity. With the academic satire, what Malcolm Bradbury wrote, and the genre that Dr. Willow visited with a couple of books, and John Barr at the beginning of his career, and many people since. And so As You Climb Across the Table was my attempt to write an academic satire. And This was despite not only being not a college professor at that point, but a college dropout. I think I might have been the only sophomore who ever wrote anything at that time. And I had this, and then I wrote, you know, a book that was a Western, really. It was set in space. It was Girl in Landscape was really an attempt to do a John Ford film on another planet. And I was so committed to the sort of exoskeletal power, the formal power of the genre patterns. And everything I did up to a certain point was really legible on those terms. And then I kind of exploded it with these autobiographical books in the middle of my writing life. What's now, from this vantage, the middle of my writing life. Fortress of Solitude, and you know, in a funny way, the little book about the rock band in LA was also, it was really about my 20s in the Bay Area, and Dissident Garden, which was all about being a red diaper baby, and the legacy of my family's leftism. And I threw away these genre structures that had been so reassuring to me and exciting, attractive. But now I feel I'm kind of groping my way back inside those machines to see if they can be operated from a new perspective.
Yeah. This is fascinating. Do you feel that the as it were, the sidetrack into autobiography was a pivot, and it was a pivot?
Well, in one sense, I was discovering other genres. I mean, I was reading, you know, Christina Stead's The Man Who Loved Children, and Call It Sleep by Henry Roth. I mean, these are not books with a rigid structural economy of genres as we ordinarily describe them, but they are also the Philba's roman, the historical saga. You know,
the structure of a life.
That is also a genre, and it became coherent to me once I was. Of course, it was my reading life that led me into the possibility of writing these things. It might appear to only be outpourings from the self, but I could never have done them without examples that, in a sense, were also formal kits to use.
This is exactly what happened to me with Climbers, because Climbers is an autobiographical novel, and it was the result of, I can only say, farming the autobiographies of the 20s and 30s, the 1920s and 30s, the obsession with observation, with Christopher Isherwood trying to be a camera, and all of this, was presumably all the time knowing he couldn't be a camera because you can't. And for me, that was, I mean, these things happen to us all individually. There was this massive sense that there was a freedom granted to you, partly by moving into the autobiographical structure, the structure of the life, but also by being able to maybe connect with your own life more directly than you do through genre forms. But also, one more point. We forbade ourselves to do that in a new way in Britain. That was the big no-no. The big no-no was to write autobiographically. You must never do it. And if you did do it, you must never admit it. So to me, it was not just a liberation in terms of everything from technique to viewpoint, as it were. It was a liberation from the new way.
Well, that's very striking to hear that. Of course, I also saw it as, in some way, I mean, I have another kind of understructure to my beginnings as a writer, which is my father was a painter and I was trained in art school. I was making paintings and sculptures. So whereas many people before they're writing are doing before they're writing fiction are writing in some other mode, or they're students, which I quit being. I've done very little writing of any kind. What I've done and trained to do was make plastic objects. And so I thought of the novels and stories as plastic objects that should have interest, that should be marvelous and surprising, but I didn't think they were meant to be vehicles for my opinions, or let alone my confessions. They were meant to be kind of, offerings, toys, useless but charming new objects. And so it was very slow for me to think of writing as a way to talk about myself, but then having broken that inhibition, the earlier novels started to look to me like allegorical, autobiographical pieces.
As they did.
I saw all
Yeah.
sorts of
Yeah.
elements of myself that
Yeah.
had insisted on finding their way in.
Yeah, but then you're free, and then you think, I no longer need to do either genre or autobiography because now I'm myself. I can look at anything, and you started to look at anything you wanted to look at, to write about.
I have a question for you about J.J. Butler, because who you might have known a bit, I think, possibly.
Very little.
Very well. I idolized him for so long. I still do.
Me too.
But in this description you've offered, I mean, he is the emblem of the new wave, and he has this hinge in his own career where he suddenly writes The Empire of the Sun, which is, a stupendous book. But he stopped allegorizing his personal material because he suddenly produced it.
Directly.
And I don't think his writing was ever the same after that. I'm sorry to say, it's very committed, but it's never feels as like it burns with the same necessity.
Yeah, you have to. I think this is the deep problem that the trajectory that we've described is basically was, whether you liked it or not, I don't recall that, he was an autobiographer of the soul. He was an autobiographer who crept up on his own autobiography, as it were, from other angles. Why? You can tell, you know why, because you know his history. What fascinates me is why you and I would do it. But because we didn't go through an internment camp in the Second World War, we haven't gone through the same appalling early life as he must have experienced.
This raises a question, and I agree because I don't know your life story so well. Is there any form, obviously not grandiose like ours, but is there a form of dislocation or reframing in mid-childhood for you, where you moved somewhere, or was there a massive breach in your experience as a child? Because I was once in a conversation with a bunch of U.S. science fiction writers, and they began comparing notes and arrived at this consensus that being shifted and reframing kind of the sociology of childhood at some point was a predicate for choosing to write science fiction, because you saw this, you had double vision. You saw the constructive nature of social reality because of this, whatever it was, this gulf or breach or trauma.
In fact, I think they work together to a degree. If you've read any science fiction as a young person, you've already been given that sense of alienated distance, as it were, as an attractive proposition. The only thing that happened to me was that my father died when I was about 13, and curiously enough, that's when I began to write.
My mother died when I was 14.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Well, should we ask?
Yes, let's hear it.
Sorry, we forgot the new age.
No, por favor. Tengo dos dudas. En principio, entonces Pilicón no existe. Eso.
Yeah, I can confirm that. Yeah.
Will you repeat that?
Si Piliconium no existe. No me quedó claro si Piliconium existe o no.
We haven't time to get into this. It took me like 5 years to write the trilogy, and I still couldn't be certain. I can tell you that there is a place called Viracay, which is in Shropshire. It's an old Roman settlement. In fact, it's less a settlement than it was an army camp on what has now become a major road into Wales. And it was designed to control the natives. but in the late 1800s or early 1900s, a poet called Mary Webb wrote a poem which began with the words Viracom, Viracom, Viraconium. And I was fascinated by that as a kid. It was a magical kind of incantation. So when I came to write Viraconium, I changed one letter and then created a city which had absolutely nothing to do with Romans or ruins of that sort whatsoever. The only other link to reality in that sense, in this historical, geographical sense, is that I was stuck for fantasy names. Fantasy naming is a big problem, especially when you're young. How do you invent a name? So I decided not to. I would get out a map of Great Britain, and I would literally stab pins into it. And wherever the pin stabbed, I would use that place name. I would try to make it a character name instead, or I would hear a character name, or I would read a name from the back of a lorry, and how shall I say, steal it, basically. So I stole a lot of names from Shropshire, because I like the sound of a lot of them. I've never been to Shropshire, I never intended to go to Shropshire. I now live less than 10 miles away from Viraconium, among all those names. So when we drive out to go shopping on a Saturday, we drive past Viraconium places. And this is really disturbing. Because there have been other instances during my writing life where I have realized you should actually never write it down, because if you do, it will happen. So, I mean, to be serious about Viraconium, its job, its literary job, as it were, if it had one, was to disrupt the almost basic relationship between the fantasy novel and fantasy geography, and also fantasy history. It seemed to me that the glib historical causalities of fantasy were a trap for the writer and the reader, and that the obsession with fake geographies, and particularly fake geologies, for some reason that really annoyed me when I was 25. Why would you make up a geology when the world is like full of it? And so my first idea was to disrupt that whole sense of place on which fantasy is based, and to perhaps produce the sense of place without the fantasy, or the fantasy without the sense of place, to break that connection. I'm not going to say any more. Look, have you got anything to say about that?
I'll wait for another question.
Sí, le quería preguntar, de sus obras se desprende con bastante claridad una relación hostil con los presupuestos de la realidad. Creo que tiene algo que ver con lo que recién Mike estaba diciendo. Y lo que le quería preguntar es cuáles son para ustedes las trampas del conocimiento y del pensamiento científico tal cual lo entendemos en nuestra sociedad.
I think I've understood. It's about the reality vested underneath reality, or within reality. Did you hear me? Is this okay? Well, so I associate that description most of all with two of my novels, with Amnesia Moon and Chronic City.
Great titles.
And of course I associate that sensation that one is trying to peel back the veneer and discover the underneath of the world, the structure behind the stage set of our experiences. very strongly with the writer I already mentioned, with FILBA, who I was emulating quite nakedly early on, and Michel is my most shameless attempt to work with his lexicon, his toolkit. But I also was reading a lot of the international, what I thought of as the international fabulators who I've mentioned, Cortazar and Kobayashi. And there was a new kind of writing in English that was, I think, influenced differently. The exemplar of this for me at that time was Steve Erickson, who had written 2 or 3 novels, Rubicon Beach and Those Between Stations, that absolutely enthralled me. And they were American surrealism, really, but using vernacular materials, using the materials of the road movie and film noir and elements of Ballardian or Dickian science fiction landscapes, kind of dreamlike, incoherent futures. And he took this to another degree that I really was excited by. But I also was sometimes perplexed by some of his language. It got very abstract. And I thought, I want to write a Steve Erickson novel, but take the abstractions out of it. And just have the dream material, kind of more like a B movie, less like a kind of aspirational literary novel. And but all of these writers and some others that I care for greatly can convey this flavor, the scent of solipsistic or paranoid expose. Everything is being generated by disturbed mind. I mean, this is also true of Doris Lessing's Memoirs of a Survivor. There's this tradition. In a way, it's the uncanny. I used to have a weakness, I thought, in a way, for stories like Rod Serling's Twilight Zone, where there would be a twist and everything would turn out to be a kind of fiction. This is also Paradello, 6 Characters in Search of an Author. This is kind of the baseline condition. And I didn't think that I had something new to say in that register, so much as I just wanted to play with that image, that ideal, that dream. I wanted to enter my own dream into that space, and see if I could do it too. By the time of Conic City, which in a way is a convergence of my writing about New York City and my autobiographical depictions of circles of friends staying up all night, taking drugs. It's a much more language-based kind of writing where I'm interested in the surrealism not only within images that you can evoke, but within sentences, within word choices.
Yeah.
But I'm still thinking, what if I could blow up the Steve Erickson novel or the Philip K. Dick novel, so that it was also kind of like a Salt Bellow novel, where the voice and the kind of unhealthy charisma of the characters is equally important. So I don't know whether that's a sustainable idea, but I managed to write one book in that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. What fascinated me about this was that after maybe 5 years of the type of processes and perceptions that you just described, I suddenly became aware that I had become less interested in the actual idea of a secondary, of a world underneath, as it were, a true world, a real world underneath, than in the epistemology of that. How do we get our knowledge about what the world is? Or rather, much more importantly, how is it possible to be able to say there is a world that we see and a world underneath it? How do you say that? How do you know? And from then on, I began to write characters who were terminally disoriented in that particular way and didn't know it. Because again, you know, there is an epistemology of that knowledge. You know, how do you know that you're not knowing? How do you know that you're disoriented by not knowing? I came across the sociological concept of ontological disruption, of not being sure of how you get the things that give you your life, which marginalised people feel, and which even ordinary people can feel if they become slightly marginalised. And I thought, well, from now on I'm going to, since I feel like this anyway, and since I felt like this since my father died, basically, I think I would like to write about characters who are in this condition. They're in a condition of ontological insecurity, epistemological insecurity. These are big words, but what it means is disorientation, I think.
Well, so let me take this one place further, because I love your description. And you know, one of the things I discovered that I was always writing about, when I say, for example, the early novels turned out to look like allegorical attempts at the professional writing I was to do later, is that I was always interested in the presence of subcultural affiliations and minority positions, minority affiliations within the official social spaces or within the presumed social spaces. And this is partly because my parents were, in their way, always operating within kind of a dissident or bohemian kind of position. And yet I, as a child, often mistook it for the only world. You know, so their worldviews became predominant while I was in them, which is also comparable in many ways to the experience of growing up inside a reading subculture like science fiction.
Yeah.
And it's a question of not just what is the experience of, the epistemology of an individual kind of abreaction or dissident position or minority view that can't be confirmed by other individuals, but what is the value of a collective heritage enterprise? You know, and this is the thing that, in a funny way, when I wrote A Dissident Gardens, which is a novel about a historical novel, really, even though I don't really believe in historical novels, I think it can completely lie, but I tried to deal with my objections to the historical novel within one. I was also writing about, in a sense, a science fictional proposition, which is that American revolutionary desire wasn't dead. That it was possible to still be an American communist, but it was a very difficult possibility. And that was a kind of science fiction novel in its way, because it's really about the presence of the invisible, the suspected second reality underneath or within or possible just out of reach or coming, the possibility of the world becoming other than it is. All of these things nestle inside the description you just created.
Yeah, they do, and they lead you to be able to write about all the concerns that which were not, which is also fascinating. I found that I became a more political writer the moment I slipped into that particular condition. But, you know, I became much more aware of the kinds of things that you talked about. And it also gives you, it is this vast suitcase full of possible metaphors and structures, and metaphorical structures, which you can use. It's like a real sandbox, a real playbox, you know. Yeah.
Respecto a esto que estaban hablando recién en relación al deseo revolucionario da la sensación de que los protagonistas de sus historias tienen una relación muy particular e intensa con el deseo. Se podría decir que para ellos no es tan importante lo que se desea, sino cómo se lo desea. Y si les parece que sí, ¿qué aspectos poéticos y políticos atraviesa esa relación con el deseo?
Wow. Too much. I want to have a beautifully sufficient answer for it, but it almost answers itself. It's a description, I think, of something that means so much to me that I'm now just hoping that anyone would perceive the same thing you have, which is that our political conscience actually begins in our bodies, in our dreaming, and in our desires, you know. And this is where I have very slowly, you know, in a sense, reconstituted the political life that I was born to, and you know, in my parents' world, and in also a generational sense, and that I felt slip away and receive a kind of bitter refusal during the Reagan years in the United States, such that I felt you know, quite a combination of shame or conflict or embarrassment that I even recollected certain desires for another world. It's merciful that I've lived long enough to see and experience a humbling reconstitution by people mostly younger than myself. I'm weirdly, my political appetite was hidden inside my body in many ways. And that's the subject of parts of that long novel, which is, you know, it's a very tormented book. But oddly, it was while I was in the course of writing it that the Occupy movement erupted in New York City and elsewhere, and gave capitalism back its name in its ways. There suddenly was the possibility of simply being an anti-capitalist because it had been, I mean, I really think that the initial gesture was total. People will speak of its the blowback or the resistance, and certainly there's been painful versions of blowback or resistance. But I think there was a transformative reconstitution, is the word I've used a couple of times, of the missing name.
It reinvigorated me 2010, 2011. Suddenly felt angry again, really, you know, because that's how I expressed it. I was in a rage from then on. I still am in a rage, but who knows where that will lead. But to me, what's interesting about the question is desire is certainly absolutely central in most of its senses, including the political and the philosophical, modern philosophical sense. Is certainly central to my stories, especially the short stories, and especially the light trilogy. That I've always tended to write about desire as the failure of desire, and I always tend to write characters whose ability to be desiring is rapidly fading, is rapidly evaporating. And I think about it too, I think in a very old-fashioned way, in a Gnostic way, that desire is a trap. That essentially, many of the problems we now face because they come to us as the revenge of desire, as it were. We desire too much and we've got it, but actually achieved many, many things that we desired. And we now don't know what to do with ourselves. I'm aware that's not a very left-wing position, by the way. I see that as piggybacking on my leftism. The two are separate. I think that's because essentially I am a kind of pessimistic character myself. But certainly in 2010, I felt the biggest surge of energy, political energy, that I felt since 1968. Really.
I actually don't have a very good sense of what went on in England at that
Well,
time.
we had our equivalent. We had Occupy. But most of all, what we had was an explosion of young people who were really, really angry. They could see and they still can see their future evaporating. A future that was generated as a desire by the very system that's now evaporated, which is not a sort of a place to find yourself in at 20 years old. And that is going to make you angry, and it's also, I think, sadly, but thankfully, it's going to cause you to make change, to begin to make change. And I think somehow, most of us have lost the ability to do that, to think like that, to, whether because of age or what, we've forgotten how to change things. We've forgotten that things could be changed. And to have that back, to have the sense that things can be changed is astonishing. Yeah, it's a revelation, and it's another liberation, one of those many liberations that life presents you with.
Pensando en lo que hablaban los dos recién sobre la realidad tanto en Estados Unidos como en Inglaterra con estos movimientos, yo les quería preguntar que como ciudadanos del centro del mundo occidental, un centro que muchas veces, o casi siempre, para permanecer en el centro, siempre parece estar ubicándose a la derecha. ¿De qué manera creen que la izquierda puede dar batalla?
We have to learn new languages, and we have to start with, we have to learn the language we're being beaten by. That's difficult enough in itself. The languages of right-wing populism are very difficult to disrupt. I do not and cannot think of any advice to offer about that, even though I've spent my life with language. After that, we have to make a new language of our own. And to do that, I can only speak for Great Britain, because my knowledge of what goes on in the rest of the world is never going to be complete enough to be able to say anything. But in Britain, the left is very disconnected from itself. And the real problem is that if the left talk together across the spectrum, from the far left to the centre left, then we would defeat the right in about a week. But nobody on the left will cooperate with anybody else on the left. And I think that's a very dangerous situation to be in, and many of us do. Meanwhile, we sit here wondering what will happen next. I think you guys probably have a lot more experience in dealing with that situation than we do.
Acá pasa exactamente lo mismo. De la mano de esta pregunta también quería saber qué los entusiasma, que de alguna manera ya lo estuvieron comentando, pero quisiera que profundizaran si pueden y si quieren, qué los entusiasma del presente y qué los aburre particularmente del presente.
really so much that excites me, and I have no comprehensive grasp of it. I don't actually feel like I can index what's going on, but the multiplicity of channels and the multiplicity of conversations, despite the disadvantages of so much of the kind of global corporate controls on the channels and the conversations, is a tension that's extremely exciting and extremely confusing. I suppose exactly what's happening right now, that we're having a conversation that's by its absolute structure international, seems to me one of the most hopeful and exciting things that could possibly go on. Coming here, I feel renewed and reframed and curious about things that I forget to be curious about. I'm talking with Mike, but also here in front of you with your conversations in the context of this experience, visiting your city, hearing everyone talk about what kind of cultural experiences they're encountering, desiring, meeting publishers and writers, even hearing the less writing described paraphrase in the excitement of Argentinian readers changes my sense of what's going on and what's possible. That seems to me, to not react to global corporatism by a retrenchment into national identity. But instead to make it a kind of international conversation to rival global corporatism. Seems to me to be the most hopeful.
I can't add anything to that at all. Seems to. The only extra thing that excites me is some of the reading that I've been doing. I was recently introduced, or we were all recently introduced in Great Britain to Mariana Enrique, whose collection, Things We Lost in the Fire, was just published over there finally in translation. Fantastic translation, brilliant book, but an eye-opener in terms of what you just said in terms of being able to learn what the conversation was elsewhere and how it was being held, and how that might be applied. I've also been reading a fair amount of Mexican fiction and non-fiction. Over there, they're producing some very interesting ideas about I think what's called gore capitalism, and over the last year that's begun to change the way I think about the very limited situation of my very limited national situation. So,
Can we take some questions from the audience as well? Do we have time?
No sé, Víctor, bueno, abrimos el micrófono para hacer algunas preguntas del público. ¿Quién quiere romper el hielo?
now, come on, somebody must want to ready. Ask a question.
Hello, nice to meet you. Which are, if you have to choose one author, each other, which do you think is that author that you are always recurring to it, that you always come back to him, to read him, that you think, I can't live without author?
Picking one author, is that the...
This is an unfair game, really. Because, like, who in this audience would answer with one name? This is like the desert island book, which book would you take when you to a desert island? And immediately you panic. The moment you confront that possibility, you panic, because you think there are 20 other books I could take with me, and what I would prefer is not to go to the desert island. I don't know. I'm going to be dead shifty about this. If I were to take a single piece of postmodern fiction with me, it will be Thomas Pynchon V, which is a very considerably favourite book of mine. If I were to take a piece of modernism with me, I would take Lawrence Durrell's Alexandria Quartet. I could go on all evening if you like, but there wouldn't be enough desert islands. I would, were I to take an Argentinian also with me, I would take Borges. Preferably I would take him alive, so that I could learn from him. I can't make a serious answer to that question.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thank you for refusing because I'm supposed to oblige you. But I love reading too much to enjoy that question. But I used to play a game in my personal library, or I look around and I think, what single letter would I settle for? And there was if you want just sheer kind of worlds, enormity of worlds, you could have D, and then you'd have Samuel Delaney and Dostoevsky and Dickens, and you would be busy on your desert island with D for a while. And I also liked L for having both Doris Lessing and Stanislaw Lem. I mean, there's many, you get many people, but of course you end up probably inevitably picking the M's because there's just a lot of them, especially with all the Nick somebody's. And I could also run it this way, although I love Borges, but I would take Cortázar. He is,
there would be problems.
Such a continuously nourishing writer for me. But I would also, the problem with this is it's also a very calcified thought. I mean, I do have all these favorites and all these totems, but I want to read something that was written tomorrow as well. And so I don't want my own reading life to turn out to be this kind of prison of certainties. Really, I'm just living for that next revelation.
Yeah, then finally you'd be forced to face the most horrific idea of them all, which is that you would have to write it, because you would be alone on it. One last point about this is that I've not yet, although I found books that lasted from decades in my mind, such as Thomas Pynchon's Spin, and as influences such as Lawrence Durrell's Alexandria Quartet, I couldn't read them every day forever without becoming bored. And so again, I'd say, I just don't want to go to the desert island.
More, please.
¿Otra pregunta?
You spoke of the political moment as invigorating, I believe, but I think, and I know at least for me, that there's something paralyzing too, especially right now where we are. And I was wondering if you experienced this as well, moments of paralysis in the creative sense, given the political environment, and if this is a sort of spectrum of immobility that you understand or feel, and if so, how you navigate that.
Yeah. I feel it every day that I wake up now. And every 2 or 3 days I ask myself the question, given the way I've learned I've learned to write inside, what on earth can I contribute? It may well be that if you spend your life anticipating the disaster, you write fiction which is anticipatory of the disaster, but it tells you nothing about how to write once the disaster is actually happening around you. I know that is a pessimistic way to put it, but it's the answer, for me it's the answer to your question. I need to start writing a new novel. I'm putting it off because I want to see what happens, because I want to know where I'm going to be. I want to know what context I'm operating out of. Essentially, I want to know what I'm going to be writing about, how I'm going to be using fiction to slide who I am against what exists. And I find that, actually, if I think about it, I find that really quite frightening. I'm 75 years old. I've spent my entire career, my entire life, since 20, writing in a certain way to encounter a certain set of political circumstances, and they are blown away. So if anybody can help me with that, I'd be very grateful.
I'm not sure how much I can expand on that really remarkable reply. It's the problem completely, and but there's also solidarity inside that problem, and this is where I'm tempted to reference the tension that is for me one of the defining descriptions of my experience, which is that I know everything I know tells me that I'm part of a species that is collective, intersubjective, that we make realities, we make communities, we make ourselves, what we mistake for our individual selves, out of the spaces between us and others. And that this is the answer to almost every one of my loneliest and darkest thoughts, is that actually it's about moving forward with others in conversation. And yet, having achieved that, hopeful thought, I am also aware that I've chosen the most self-referential and isolated path within the human prospect in some ways, which is to try to speak about these intuitions alone in a room with nothing but the alphabet, which I feel, along which I feel on my fingers every day. And that's a very strange choice if you believe in solidarity and community. And my subject is often this very tension between the individual, the direness and also vanity of the individual consciousness, and the truth of our commonality and our reciprocity. And in this crisis that you're describing, the thing to locate is other people. And I think that's where even for the individual artist and quite self-referential artist that is the novelist, that's still going to be locating other people.
Es inevitable preguntarles, frente a este panorama de lo que estaban planteando, qué es lo que están escribiendo o tratando de escribir ahora.
I just finished a novel which was intended to be a satire on a very subtle satire, a very hidden, submerged, literal submerged satire on the political situation in that they not only fail to, as it were, notice one another and make a proper relationship, but they fail to notice an alien invasion of Great Britain, which is basically what's happened to us over the last 10 years. But the problem is, that would have been fun 5 years ago. That would have been a nice little satire 5 years ago. But by the time it's published, we will know what happens when that happens. And I feel that I've really rather wasted the time on the book. At the moment I'm writing I decided that, I don't know if you've come across the concept of late style. Edward Said's book about how writers come to terms with age and how they come to terms with the vast amount they've learned about technique and style and the application of their skills to their subject matter. I read that book about 5 or 6 years ago and thought, yes, it's time I had a late style. So what will that constitute for me? And there was something about Said's book that suggested to me that one of the things about that style is that you suddenly can do all the things you wanted to do when you were 20 but did not have the technical capability to even face, let alone begin. And so I'm writing the book that I would like to write when I was about 25. It's a post-disaster, but it's a kind of Gibsonian disaster, which is based on the idea that the disaster is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. I'm doing that to mark time, because I feel also that not only is the satirical novel in a difficult position at the moment, the politically satirical novel, I think that the disaster story might be finished. Because who wants to read disaster stories when they're living through a disaster? It doesn't seem to me to be the right kind of fiction for the time. But it's something to do. And I'm also writing a lot of potential short stories. I hesitate to call them ghost stories, but that's what they are. I decided that actually while I had spent my whole life thinking that I was haunted, I was actually the ghost. Haunting other people's lives. And so I've begun to write a kind of series of, again, subtly hidden, submerged ghost stories about haunting other people's lives without knowing that that's what you're doing. At the moment that seems to me to be a subject matter that I can enter without the problems that we've just described. But at the same time say something that might actually address a kind of massive dislocation that I feel politically. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, it's very interesting. I can describe what I'm trying to finish a novel. It's not finished, but I have a draft of it. That's, in a way, it comes out of the thought about I mean, I said earlier that I've been wanting to return to some of the vehicles, some of the formal vehicles of the genres that I began entranced by. And this is a version, in a way, of a Ballardian, classic new wave or 60s or 70s era eco-catastrophe. But what I realized was that I wasn't writing a post-disaster book. I was writing so I'm going to introduce a very strange term late into this conversation. One of the things I realized I did when I saw the word written down was that I'm a meta-generic writer. I sometimes write genre novels that are about the genre.
Yeah.
And that I was writing a deliberately cozy catastrophe. that I was, because I was perceiving the end of the disaster novel, as your remark suggests, all of them start to look to me like consolation stories. They're actually positive fantasies. They're fantasies of renewal and destruction and purification and simplification. And so this didn't seem to be something that I saw as relegated to merely the famously cozy catastrophes like John Christopher, but in fact it covers even the direst ones.
Yes.
That all the Philip novels I've been relishing on my life were really consolation books, and that real dystopia was, and real catastrophe was much worse than any novel account for.
Yeah, and much more difficult to write about.
Much more difficult to write about it, and also tangible and elusive in a different way than the novel was equipped to. Now that we recognize that the prophecy is not a prophecy, it's a description of a world we're enmeshed in. It has been for quite a while. How do we make these distancing thought experiments meaningful? Well, I thought it's metageneric. It's about the desire for stories of renewal, catastrophe, purification, reset.
Yes.
So I wrote a kind of a reset, but it's a conundrum in some ways. I'm still working it through.
Yeah, it's fascinating that we both have different reactions to the same amount of work to see the problem. Because my first thought was, given everything you said about the disaster story, the cozy catastrophe particularly, the fact that all catastrophes are cozy, my first thought was, how do I disrupt that technically? Because it's all I can think of to do. And I think that that's why I'm obsolete. I honestly do think that that's why I'm obsolete. The time for writing technical deconstructions of forms is sort of over. In a way, in some way we all have to become journalists.
It's funny, I was just about to use the word witnessing.
Yeah.
I feel like the real next task is, especially as one ages, there's bridges in time. I mean, you have 20 years along the bridge further than I do. But I already feel at 55 that most of what I think and feel is enmeshed partly in the past, and it is double vision and witnessing what's changed and what I, say clearly what I have lived through.
Yeah, but also it has to be made into a new kind of machine for looking at things.
Yeah.
That's the thing, it seems to me, because otherwise it's simply retrospection, and I couldn't face that.
Yeah. No, but I'm thinking about the kind of novels that obsess over phase transition moments, because we've lived through between the onset of the digital world and the acceptance and realization of climate change and the 9/11, emergency surveillance, permanent emergency surveillance condition. We've lived through so many before and afters, and just embodying all of this experience is a kit for thinking about the next.
As long as you remember that that's what you've got to use it for. Yeah, I think so. And to bulk it on to the most direct eye that you could possibly bring to bear. And I'm beginning to think of going back to what Klein was talking about, going to a place and looking at it, watching an event and simply looking at it and writing down what you see. And using that as I hesitate to say this, but I think we have to become war reporters of a sort. Anyway, this is not to be, we shouldn't
We're tired.
Yeah. Stop us now. Stop us before we kill again.
Lo único que les voy a pedir ahora, antes de terminar, lo único que les voy a pedir es que, pese a todo, sigan escribiendo, porque al menos hasta que lleguen los extraterrestres. Después de eso puede ser que ya no sea tan importante, pero por lo menos hasta que lleguen, sigan escribiendo. Les queremos agradecer mucho todo este tiempo, todo lo que nos han brindado, y agradecerles también a todos ustedes por haber venido. Espero que hayan disfrutado tanto como yo de la conversación, y espero que sigan con las actividades del FILBA. Muchísimas gracias por todo.